Hello there. This feels like one of the most difficult films I've had to make, and I do feel like I have to make it, so I guess my subject is justice. And before I start, I just want to point out these beautiful flowers. This is elder flowers, so I'm surrounded by them. This is the elder tree. Elder is all about change. It's a fascinating tree above the ground. The vegetation and the stems and the branches are very, very soft and sappy. And below the ground, the roots are almost as hard as iron, as hard as stone. An amazing plant. So, why is it so difficult to talk about the things I want to talk about most? Well, really, it's because of this. It's because of having been gagged, literally and metaphorically, having learnt at a really young age that it's not safe to speak up, and in fact the only safe thing to do is to shut up, be quiet, be invisible. And so we've got something going on in the world today which is all about this, and so it's about justice and about injustice. So in a simpler time, when people used to know that their country was definitely working in their best interest, and the kind of things that they would do is, if there was a problem, then they would go to war to support their country. And it was really simple, because their country was right and whoever the enemy was wrong, and it was all externalized in terms of a battle or a war. And soldiers went from each country, or each part of the country had a battle, and somebody won and somebody lost. And that was like the model for the 20th century. But we're in the 21st century. But what I'm describing has been going on for thousands of years. I do mean thousands of years. Now, if I knew that what I went through as a child and afterwards was something that happened to people back in the 20th century, and it's all changed now, and no one has to suffer what I went through, that would be okay. I could really cope with that. I could live with that much better than actually how I'm finding my life. I'm finding my life to be increasingly one of being aware of the agony. And this is the unfortunate truth about being empathic, is that we feel the agony of others. So right now, as I'm making this film, there are rooms around the world, and these rooms have got filthy mattresses on. And in the corner of the room there is a bucket for people to piss and shit into. And there are girls, children, because there's going to be a place with boys where this is going on as well. So there are children in these rooms. And the only time these children leave the room is to be raped. And then when they finish being raped, they get returned to the room. And of course the house is guarded, and they are provided with the very most meagre amounts of food, so it doesn't even make any logical sense, does it? So if you're running a business, let's just suppose this right. Supposing you're running a business, and your business is to provide sex for people. Well, you'd think, wouldn't you, that if that's what you're going to do, then the people that you're going to be using to provide this service are going to be like your commodity. So you're going to look after that really well, aren't you? You're going to make sure they're really healthy, well-fed, given good conditions, because that way they'll be able to do their job for you better, and they'll be able to do it for much longer, because you're protecting your asset, your investment. That'd be logical, wouldn't it? But that's not the way this world operates. It's exactly the opposite. So it's rather similar to the way child soldiers are treated. These are disposable commodities, these children, that are used to be raped and other things done to them by those that do so. So this is going on right as I'm making this film, and I'm aware from having read fiction of Moldova. That's a place you might want to Google if you're interested in this subject at all. Just look at Moldova, and it turns out that Moldova has been a central hub for the trafficking of children and others for a very long time indeed. I thought it'd be since the collapse of communism, and with the oligarchs, that's when it would have really kicked off. I'm totally wrong. It was going on through the entire communist era too. And it was going on before communism even got started, before it was even a blink in anybody's eye. Actually, the part of the world which is now called Moldova has experienced the bestial and hideous treatment of children for like a really long time. So this is not something new. This is really long time problem. And yet what I'm describing so far, which is sex trafficking of children, and there's the disposable commodities, they're kept in these rooms, and as I say, filthy mattresses, minimum of food, a bucket of shit of piss in, and the other change you get is when you're taken out to be raped and then returned. And of course they're so traumatized they can't even really have any communication with each other, these children. All they can do is just lie there waiting for the next time it happens. So all this is horrific enough, and yet this is barely scratching the surface of what's going on, and I do mean what's going on rather than what went on. So I get back to my point. My point is, if I went through that stuff in the 20th century so that people didn't have to in the 21st, because people had woken up and done something about it, I would be feeling so different from the way I'm feeling now. But what I'm aware of is there is a worldwide industry, and the target commodity is children, and they are trafficked for sex, for physical labour, slavery, such as digging out the materials, the minerals which are used to make your mobile phones and devices. They're worked until they die, and then they get used for all sorts of other things too. And it might be really tempting to think, well, this must go on these terribly deprived third world places like Moldova and maybe the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Not a bit of it. I'm talking about things which are going on in the USA, the UK and Europe. I'm talking about ritualistic, satanic, 100% evil, ill treatments of children. And it's going on today. And the fact it's going on today, and the really big thing, the fact that nobody wants to talk about it, the fact that everybody just wants to put their heads in the sand, put their headphones on, stick their fingers in their ear and go, la 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 la, I can't hear you. That is why I'm in agony, because I can't stand it anymore. I've actually reached a point I can't bear it. And so then I get to the next part of my film, which is fear and the safety. Because of what happened to me as a child, I don't feel safe to talk about what happened to me as a child. I don't feel safe to talk about that at all. Because what I learnt is shut up and be invisible is the safe way to survive. And I'm not interested in surviving anymore. It's just not enough. I'm not interested in hiding. I can't bear that this subject is being so studiously ignored. Just go onto YouTube and look at the different films that are coming up for you to look at, and look at all these people having these nice times, and yet all this stuff is going on. So here's my point. My point is, I'm really frightened of normal people. Normal people scare me. People who have not experienced sexual abuse, satanic abuse, ritualistic abuse, they frighten me because they appear to prefer to pretend there's no problem than to face up to it. So if you're actually still watching this film, congratulations and kudos to you, because I don't expect this film's going to get many hits. On the contrary, I expect it's going to get very few views. I'd be amazed if it got more than a very small number of views, because this is very disturbing material I'm talking about. And here I am waiting for my EMDR therapy session. Well, I got another therapist this morning. I had another phone call, and I now have to wait only 5 days instead of 12, would have been minus 111. Can you imagine how much better that makes me feel? Because I literally cannot cope with how I'm feeling at the moment. And I know it's partly because time doesn't exist, so therefore I'm feeling all the agony I wasn't able to feel when I was a kid, when all those things were done. And for me, I feel much more because of what's going on to all those other children. And it is just not good enough that we aren't doing anything about it. And yet what I've learnt about me is I have been so mind controlled and programmed by what happened to me, and there's so much I need to share with you. I don't have the time, I don't have the energy, I'm too exhausted to even begin to. But one of the things that they do, the people that groom people, is they give a lot of gifts. It's rather the way the mafia. You must have heard of this. The reason why you need to be frightened of the mafia is if the mafia has given you a gift and you've been stupid enough to accept it, your history, your toast, you will do what you're told because you're under obligation. That principle doesn't just work in terms of the mafia and the ordinary normal people, it relates to children and abusers. Children and paedophiles, but they're not paedophiles, that's the wrong word. Paedophile means like children, they're not paedophiles, they're paederasts. Just listen to that word. Paederast does not like children. Paederast does hideous, evil things to children. That is the right word to use. I've got that off my chest as well. And I don't care how rambly this is because it's really hard to talk about. And it's more than upsetting. So this is what I was mind controlled into. If there's any authority figure, I go totally into blind obedience mode. I was once with a woman, and we were in London, and 2 policemen came up to us, and we were within about 5 or 6 miles of the place where all the British instruments of torture and weaponry are on sale for foreign governments to buy so they can torture and kill their civilian population. It's called Excel, E-X-C-E-L if you're interested. So we were about 5 miles away from that building. That was near enough, and there was an exhibition on at the time. So these police arrived. There's only 2 of them, there's 2 of us. But what did I do? Did I stand my ground? Did I run away? I went into total blind obedience mode, and I simply handed over my phone like I was an automaton slave. And this really upsets me. So I don't have actually any ability to defend the person I'm with or myself in those situations because the programming is so strong, which is why I'm so looking for the EMDR to finally break this chain, so that perhaps I could have some choice about how I behave in situations which are unsafe, threatening, or involving authority figures. So I appreciate that this is a pretty rambly film. I do apologise for that. I really am not able to do any better. And when I say about these 2 films I made about EMDR and PTSD and what symptoms I'm going through, what I'm trying to explain is I'm just finding it really difficult to get through each moment of each day at the moment. And that's because it's all come up because it's 2019 and this is the time to get it all out, release it all, heal, move on. And having spent an extraordinarily since 1990, having spent since 1990 working actively to heal myself on my journey, working on my own with a therapist in a therapy group, all sorts of possible things and trainings, and here I am still with the basic issues, healed so many ways on the way but still fundamentally unresolved, and having reached a point where I've ground to a halt and I'm unable to help people the way I'd like, unable to function in the relationship the way I'd like, only just about able to manage to give my mum the support that I feel that I can give her at this time. And we did good. We went out to Kenaway House in Sidmouth and we watched the Budley Salterton male voice choir and we had a cream tea and it was cool. So there you go. So it's not all agony, but that's the underlying state I'm in all the time at the moment. So thank you for listening. Cheers.